Russia's President Vladimir Putin meeting France's new president at the Palace of Versailles to celebrate the 300th anniversary of Tsar Peter's visit to the palace. Macron was emphatic before his election victory that he wouldn't support lifting sanctions on Russia until it met its obligations in Ukraine. However, he later called for the removal of some sanctions, saying it had a negative impact on bilateral trade. Let's bring in our editor-at-large now, Craig Copetas. He's joining us live from Paris, and we just had a quick look there at the handshake. Super Mac didn't crush Putin's hand, unlike Trump.
No, he didn't. Macron is not into what he calls diplomacy by public abuse. He's into, he says, diplomacy by bilateral talk, and that's what happened today at Versailles. As far as the sanctions go, Macron, during the campaign, said that he wanted to, quote, de-escalate the sanctions. We don't actually know what that means. However, the two men appear to have a start in talking about fixing the mess in Syria and perhaps the Ukraine as well, where pipes bring in some 50% of the gas, natural gas, that the European Union purchases from Russia on an annual basis.
Craig, just briefly, does Macron show any more sign of budging on the sanctions than his predecessor?
Boy, you ask a tough question. What I am hearing from Versailles is that unlike other leaders who Macron finds a little bit too ham-fisted, he wants to talk about them. The most important takeaway in the press conference is when Putin turned to him and said that Macron had a lot of Russian speakers on his staff, Russian experts who were experts not in the Soviet Union, but in Russian history, literature, and art. That means a whole lot to Vladimir Putin and the people who run the Kremlin. In fact, I would go as far to say that Macron today gave a master class on how to deal with Russia.
Oh, interesting. Now, you mentioned the gas relationship. I mean, Russia is the EU's biggest supplier of gas by far. Who is in the driving seat here in this relationship? And then we'll get to the history question about Peter the Great in a moment.
Well, it's a symbiotic relationship, Matthew. Russia has the gas. Europe has the money to buy it. Russia needs the money. Europe needs the gas. And when you're looking at 50% of European gas coming from Russia and 33% of that going through the Ukraine, you have to reach some sort of decision that can ease the playing field and bring down the tensions. And it's very clear that Donald Trump has been unable to do that. In fact, earlier today, Angela Merkel said that, you know, Trump really wasn't part of NATO anymore and the future was in the hands of the EU. And Macron really picked up the ball today on that.
Let me get to the final question then, Craig, a matter of history. Remind us who Tsar Peter was. He visited 300 years ago. And are there any similarities between him and Putin?
Yes, they're almost a mirror image, except for the 300 years. Peter Romanov was the first Russian Tsar to visit Europe. It was called the Grand Embassy, and on the second tranche of this trip, he came to France. And the reason he came to France at first was to make an alliance with the French because Peter had a problem. It was called the Ottoman Empire. But the French and the other European countries would not ally with him. Instead, Peter bought the technology and brought back the experts who were required to modernize Russia. And it really sparked the growth of Russia into a superstate. He brought back cannon makers from Germany, shipbuilders from the Netherlands, and from France, oddly enough, he brought back bureaucrats, functionaries, and to this day, the Russian bureaucracy is a mirror image of the French bureaucracy.
Craig, thank you so much for that. We just had a quick picture of Peter the Great up there, and he was dressed really beautifully. Can't match that. Okay, thank you.
He was quite a guy.
Yeah, Craig, thank you so much.